So when you assign decision rights, you have 6 governance styles. You have the concept of 1 and 2 here are really just a monarchy where one person makes the decision. In this case, it could be a C-level person, or it can be just IT makes the decision, and that's it. It is they make the decision, and no one else has a say. That really never works. Feudal is where business unit or delegates have decision or input rights, and sometimes that's good. It depends on the maturity of the organization now. Other times it actually causes a little bit more of a problem. A federated model is a little bit better because it means the rights are shared by C-level executives and other members of the higher tier. The executive decision makers are the people who have input into these types of governing rights. They accept things. They have the chance to dispute things or disagree with certain elements, and things are taken kind of to a little bit of vote, a little bit more democratic, but it's definitely a stronger model because you get more buy-in. A duopoly is where one IT group and one business group share a right. That works in some cases where like IT and finance may say we'll make the decision for finance applications. However, if financial applications have to integrate with marketing applications or logistics applications, then those two departments may be left out of the cold in terms of having an input into the standard. And anarchy, that doesn't work all the time, or it doesn't work any time, is where individual process owners or end users hold a right. This would be allowing anybody within an organization to install whatever software they want, whenever they want, without consequence. And then I'll obviously expect someone to maintain it, or when something breaks or within a security violation, not have any accountability or responsibility. So that would be an example of anarchy. The 5 decision areas where these types of decision rights are assigned. Well, principles, high-level statements about how IT will be used to create business value. These are generally done at a better level with executives. IT infrastructure strategies state the approach for building shared and standard IT services across the enterprise. Well, this is much more, this is actually better when you have more technologists actually having a say because they understand the technology better. However, they still should have a few tech-savvy business people to basically have input into that so they can make sure that it doesn't impact the business in some way. An example of that would be outsourcing, let's say your medical record system, if you're a healthcare company, outsourcing it to a foreign country. That may be a problem because you need access to the data. It may be a legal problem or it may just not be acceptable to have private health information out of the country. IT architecture states technical choices that will meet business needs. However, it's a little bit more than that. IT architecture is really about the systems, the applications, the network, the infrastructure, as well as the user rights. So IT architecture usually has a governing council which includes business people, technical people together making decisions. And these are including executives as well as some field level people or people who are in the field who understand their business or understand the technology extremely well to have some input. Business application needs is another one where businesses usually define what they need in terms of what an application can do, even though they may not have any full say, but they'll have a partial say in what type of application they would want from a technology perspective. And then IT investment and prioritization defines the process for moving IT investments through justification, approval, and accountability. And everybody has a say in this. Because if we have 10 projects, but we can only do 5 or 6, well, which 5 or 6 do you choose? Business owners are going to be impacted by those types of decisions, and that should never be left just up to an IT department. So there's a matrix here that's in your book that you can take a look at a little bit closer that kind of shows where and who is involved in these types of inputs and decisions. IT investments are usually very large. You don't see a $20,000 or $30,000 investment. Most of the investments are $100,000, $500,000, million, or $10 million type of dollar investments. As an example, some of the projects that are done in healthcare, like an EMR application, electronic medical records application for a hospital, could actually run in the $10, $20 million range easily over the course of a 2-year period. In some financial applications, a data warehouse, financial industry or financial companies, and data warehouse application could easily run $10 to $50 billion, depending on how big that database is, the technology needed, the number of people that are needed. So business executives used to be able to blame CIOs for IT investments, but the better strategy now is that CIOs are bringing those business executives in so that they can ensure that the business has a say. It's very hard when someone has a say in something for them to say that it didn't work or it was bad. From a managing perspective, CIOs are changing the business. The IT systems that they implement bring about change. But before CIO and IS organization will be heard as a voice for change, they must be viewed as successful and reliable. Nobody wants to implement a $10 million system and have it not succeed. So if a CIO comes over and says, we are going to implement this system and it's going to be $5 to $10 million, there's going to be a lot of hesitation unless there's a proven track record of success. In order to do that, there needs to be communication and collaboration between IT and the business. So to foster change, a CIO has to establish this credibility. So credibility and communication are absolutely key. The first job is to get the today and operation in shape. As long as things are running well, people will not dispute new applications. They'll say, if things are not running well, most people would say, wait, how can you implement a new system when you have such a big problem with your current systems? Managing today includes computer operations, technical support, help desk, maintenance, and enhancement of existing systems. Delivery oriented with a high level of service. When we deliver something, we need to say that it's going to work 99.9% of the time. Working 95% of the time will not work. Working 90% of the time will definitely not work. So how are we making sure that we can deliver the highest quality product and keep it running every day? In some cases, we're going to outsource parts of it because it's easier to do. It's easier to manage that way. Once you have the stuff working today well, it's easier to deal with issues that are going to happen tomorrow, or easier to implement systems that are for tomorrow. So the office of the CIO, it's a pretty big thing. The CIO has a lot of responsibility. Some people believe there really needs to be some division between it. And while the CIO is normally considered the head, sometimes you have a chief technology officer, the CTO, who handles specific parts of technology and architecture. It's their role to maintain certain technologies and make sure the operation is running well. In some cases, that job is even split to a chief operations officer who handles things like the data center, networking, telecommunications, and PC rollouts and help desk, those types of items. And in other cases, you'll have a chief project officer who's responsible for the IT level projects. I can tell you that number 3 and number 4 you don't see as much, but you do see 1 and 2 within the same organization. And it is very rare to have a CIO report to a CTO. I've never actually seen that, but it's not uncommon to have a CTO report to a CIO, especially when you have a CIO who has another role. And you do see in cases some CIOs are actually CIOs, COOs, or CIOs and CFOs, or even CIOs and CMOs, Chief Marketing Officer. And in some cases, you have people who are CMIOs, Chief Medical Information Officers for hospitals, actually have that role of a CIO as well, because they understand what is needed for the hospital. So it is critical for the enterprise to succeed, to have the know-how needed to run it very, very broad and deep, and management ultimately becomes a team effort. So in conclusion, IT decision-making has to be shared. The main responsibility for managing the use of IT needs to pass to the line, while management of IT must be retained to the IS group. So managing how IT is used goes out to the business, but managing the technology and the infrastructure is retained by the IS group. Even though the IS group has little hands in each one of the areas, it's really up to the business to make sure that they are using it as effectively as can. And so your book says it's reflected with the following saying: we used to do it to them. Back then it was, we used to just throw the IT technologies because nobody knew. So you had the guy with 5 beepers and cell phones, and then he was the one, or she was the one who knew everything about technology. That was the person you didn't want to talk to. Then we did it for them, right, where everything was into a service orientation. So now we do it with them, which reflects partnering, that IT is basically a partner with them. And we're moving towards teaching them how to do it themselves. It's always a good thing when IT can say to the business, you don't need us anymore. Not a great thing from a job perspective, some people believe, but the reality is if you can take your job and basically get your business users to believe that you're no longer needed, you've done your job from an IT technology. You've implemented the right technology, you've given the users the right infrastructure, it's working for them, and they understand it. And it's kind of like the telephone. Many people pick up the telephone every day not realizing all the work that goes before it. And if it's working like that, then it's a pretty successful product. So another question that we're going to ask is, how do the roles of CIOs differ by industry? So in the Blackboard discussions, maybe you can actually put down, can you suggest what type of person might be good for as a CIO in your industry? Is it someone who's more involved with the business, or is it someone who's more technical savvy? What is it that you need? When you answer this, try and take into account the maturity of the organization and what the organization needs. Okay? So we'll see you for Chapter 3.